Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Huerga, and I'm your host in the podcast of Falla con Éxito. My mission is to bring people from different professional areas so they can share with us their experience, routines, mistakes, but above everything, their tools. Our guest today is a world-class educator about blockchain technology. He's the host of the podcast Let's Talk About Bitcoin, best-selling author of books like Mastering Bitcoin, Mastering Ethereum, and Internet of Money. Our guest has been an educator for the Canadian Senate. He has been in Bloomberg, CNN, CBS, ABC, BBC, among others. He's a frequent guest in the Joe Rogan Experience, London Real, and other reference sites on the internet. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Andreas M Antonopoulos. Welcome, man.
Mucho gusto, David. Thank you so much.
My pleasure to have you here. I used to do a regular podcast, as I told you, and then at the end make a few super short questions, but I find that I should ask this question at the beginning of the conversation. So I will ask you, what is the thing that people doesn't ask you too much, or they don't put the attention enough, and you believe is super important for whatever, blockchain technology or whatever area, that you believe this is the thing and nobody is asking me for this?
I think it's very closely related to the theme of your podcast, which is people see me as someone who's successful. So they want to ask me, what are all of the things that I did right? And the reason that I am successful is because I kept trying after all of the things that I did wrong and tried to learn from my mistakes and tried again. So I've taken some very big risks in my life. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm very lucky and very fortunate to have a stable family, a good education, and the best possible start in life. But in order to succeed, I've taken very big risks and I've made some pretty big mistakes. Mistakes in business partnerships, mistakes in risky economic decisions, bad personal habits, all kinds of things, which I wish I could go back and fix. And, you know, people dream of a time machine where you go back and you erase all of your mistakes. And if I did that, I wouldn't be successful because all of those mistakes are actually what taught me all of the important lessons.
Yeah. What is a mistake for you?
So a mistake is, I think, when I make a choice without the right information, or I avoid making a choice. That's my most common mistake, is avoiding making a choice because I don't want to, because I'm emotionally committed to something. And I end up having to make that choice just a lot later and a lot greater cost because I delay confrontation. I'm generally not a very aggressive person and I don't like confrontation. So a lot of my mistakes have to do with letting things that shouldn't be happening continue to happen because I'm hoping that they're just going to magically get better and don't want to force a choice. I think that's the kind of mistake. A lot of mistakes in life, I think, are about timing. The right time to do something and the wrong time to do something. And it's, of course, impossible to see in the moment. You only see that afterwards. And a lot of mistakes are about trust. Either putting trust in people you shouldn't put in, but also becoming distrustful of people and not trusting in people who otherwise can help you a lot. So that balance is very, very difficult.
Yeah, you said at the beginning, like, it's missing information. But if you don't move forward in life, it's like when you play a video game and you don't know what is 2 screens ahead. So you need to keep walking, keep exploring, and the information is going to reveal, so you can later figure out what you're going to do.
Yeah, I think as I grow older, I've become a bit more comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's helped me a lot, as well as more comfortable with showing vulnerability. So when I was young, I think I had a tendency to believe that showing vulnerability was weakness. And in fact, I now know it's not, quite the opposite. So being able to show my true feelings, opening myself up to be heard, risking a relationship, saying something that I really mean and I truly believe, but which makes me very vulnerable to rejection or ridicule or something else, and doing that in an even bigger, more public way. In fact, I think a lot of my success as an educator and as someone who works in the space with video and being on stage and doing conference speaking is because I frequently embarrass myself, or I frequently put myself in positions that I might embarrass myself, or I fear that I'll embarrass myself. And the more fearful I feel at the moment, the more authentic that experience is. And people feel that. They can see that I'm putting myself out there. And that makes a huge difference in how you can engage people, because you can't fake that.
Yeah, basically. I swear I would love to keep talking about this, keep talking about ego and so on, but I would like to talk a little bit about technology and so on. So we will switch.
Sure, let's go.
Super cold switch, but we really have limited time. So I have one note that I hear from you somewhere, like for growing or escalating the technology, like blockchain overall, we need more users, then we have more data, and then we have more apps. And when I talk with my friends, they are like, they cannot understand why we don't need first the apps, then we have the data, and the users will come, because we or they, because I'm not an expert as they are, believe that users are not going to come if the apps are not completely developed or offer a good value. So I'm super interested about hearing your thoughts about this.
Well, I think these things happen in circles. At first you have very few apps, and those apps are not easy to use. And the only users who you can really get to try them are people who are either very much into the technology or very ideologically driven, or they have a very pressing need. So let's give an example with Bitcoin and blockchain. Using money that can cross borders and protect itself against inflation is not particularly relevant to your average American middle class professional. But if you're Venezuelan and the application is hard to use, but it will save your family, and the currency is hard to get, but it will save your family, and it's extremely risky and dangerous and even illegal, but it will save your family, you will learn, you will use, you will do it. And so those are the users we get. We get users who are in crisis situations, who are looking for an exit that only a technology like this can offer. Now, in serving those users, we build better applications, we develop the infrastructure. And as we build better applications and develop the infrastructure, different types of users can now use it because it got easier, because it can fit other needs, etc. So we get more of those users. And then that creates investment and excitement to develop the applications more. And the cycle continues. And it's the same thing that happened with the internet and with every other technology. You can't have a perfect application before you have users, because you don't know what the perfect application is. It's different in every country. It's different in every neighborhood. It's different in every economic class. It's different in different circumstances. And it's also different in every language. So ultimately, the ones who build applications are the users, either directly because they write code or indirectly because they tell developers what they need, so the developers can write that code.
Yeah,
You can't have applications without users or before users.
This is what you call banking the unbanking people.
But yes, banking the unbanked or underbanked. I think that's the strongest application for this. It's about having an independent financial and monetary system.
What do you think, like governments or banks or big corporations, people who has a lot of power, is going to do when this moment of giving up some kind of power comes? Because at the end, money is one super good power in the world, like energy. And if these unbanked people, which is like most of the population, is going to use Bitcoin or other currency for payments and so on, somebody is going to, they need to give up some power.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think?
Well, they're not going to give it up. It's going to be taken from them, and it's going to be taken from them by people abandoning systems that don't work for them and choosing to use systems that do work for them. But there's going to be difficulty. I mean, well, first of all, what they're going to do is they're going to scream and shout. They're going to scream and shout that this system can't work, won't work, and is useless. They've already done that. And the people who care about this don't believe them. Then they're going to scream that only criminals, pornographers, terrorists, and pedophiles will use this technology. And every time they say that, and you meet a taxi driver and a hairdresser and a dentist who uses this technology, you believe them less. And then they say that they have a better one. But it's not better, because the whole point is to take the power and make it independent. And what they're building is better for them, and it strengthens the status quo. It doesn't change enough. And so all of these efforts, eventually you can't fight the progression of history. You can't fight the fact that where there is a better technology that helps more people in more ways than the previous technology, it will be used. It will change, yes. It will be resisted, yes. But they can't stop an idea, and this is what this is fundamentally. Like any software-based digital technology, it's fundamentally an idea, and you can't make people forget that that idea exists. And so there's going to be a bit of a fight, but ultimately this is a very, very long, society-changing, generational competition. And if we build good software that helps people in more ways, it's something that will succeed.
You said that for having more choices to succeed, or at least faster, we need like a strong power, which leads to, or comes from, I would say, from more privacy. So we need more strong power for better privacy. The thing I believe, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, like the world is becoming less and less private, and the governments or systems want to control way and way more their population overall. So it's like we want to go in one way, or blockchain community wants to go in one way, but the world is going into the other way.
But yes, but that's a relatively recent phenomenon, meaning that for thousands of years, humans have had completely private, untraceable, surveillance-free money that can be used globally, cash, that can be used globally without anybody knowing who's spending what and where. And the idea that all financial transactions should be seen by government is a relatively modern idea. It started in the mid-1970s. And what it does is it leads to extreme examples of corruption. And ultimately, in my opinion, it leads to totalitarianism, whether right-wing fascism or left-wing authoritarianism, doesn't really matter, but it leads to totalitarianism. It leads to corrupt governments controlling people's lives. And so no matter which direction governments go, governments exist as representatives of the people. and they only have power if the people give them the ability to have power because they believe in their ideals. Privacy is a fundamental human right. It is part of our nature as a social species, and a society that destroys privacy is a sick society and isn't a very stable society. So as a result, it doesn't matter which way governments are going. If the way they're going violates human rights, if it creates fragile and sick societies, if it concentrates power and creates corruption, it's a system that doesn't serve humanity. And I'm much more interested in building systems that do serve humanity. The other thing to realize is they're going to do what they're going to do, whether we do Bitcoin and blockchain or not. We were already going to a world in which digital currency would be the only form of currency. Cash is being eradicated gradually from every society. And the goal is to control financial systems 100% in a central manner. That is totalitarianism, totalitarian control. We were going that way anyway. The only difference is now what Bitcoin and open blockchains propose is a viable global alternative choice.
In fact, a few days ago here in Spain, the government said that maybe because of this crisis, because of this COVID, whatever, they proposed to only make payments with credit or debit card. So there is less money laundering, less black money and so on. And they said, like, maybe we could do this for a few months because the government doesn't have funds and they want to get taxes and so on. But they tried to, and they are still trying to make payments only available with cards or online money, basically.
Yes, it's the old idea of never let a crisis be wasted. Always take an opportunity to accumulate power. Especially in Spain, people should have enough of a historic memory. Now, imagine Franco only with complete control of all finance. It's really simple. One day you're going to have an election, and that election is going to elect someone who is dangerous. And then your political institutions are only strong as your desire to defend them and the technologies you have to regain your freedom. If you give any government the technological power to seize control, you are one bad election from repeating a very dark history. And it can happen in any country. There is no people on this world who are immune to totalitarianism, whose democracy is resistant to it, unless they actually work for that. Every society can go down that path. And what history has shown us is it can happen very, very quickly.
What are your thoughts on quantum machine and computing on the line blockchain security?
Well, I think for many people, when they look at Bitcoin and blockchain, they look at the existing security mechanism. And of course, the first question that everybody asks is, okay, this seems like it's too good to be true. So there's got to be a fault somewhere. And they start going through a mental list of all of the things that could go wrong. Okay, could government ban it? Okay, no, I see why not. Okay, what about hackers? What about, and they just go through all of these lists. Well, quantum computing is just one of the items on the list. It seems like a way that this would break. Once you realize, however, that this is a dynamic system that uses a game theory mechanism of incentives to evolve, and that its security has to keep getting upgraded to adjust to new threats, and that within the system, there are incentives to make sure that people secure their own money. And those incentives have worked very well in the past. Then it's reasonable to assume that if there is a threat of quantum computing, what happens in Bitcoin and other open blockchains is we upgrade our digital signature scheme to be quantum resistant. And it's as simple as that. Then it gets into the practical issues of when do you upgrade? Is it too early? Is it too late? How do you upgrade? How do you upgrade everyone? How do you upgrade in a way that doesn't break everything? And these are really computer science, distributed systems, and engineering challenges. But none of them are fatal problems. They're just engineering problems, and engineering problems plus good incentives equals good solutions. It's really quite simple.
Yeah, as you said, there is a super big list on topics that people throw to you when you talk about blockchain in the long run. You are super sure or convinced that blockchain is going to succeed. But I'm super sure, as we talked at the beginning, that you see many failures, mistakes along the way. And as we said, we have this super long list. And maybe you want to share with us what are the areas or the items in the list that are going to be more dangerous for the community or for the people itself, or for the companies.
So I think I'm not super convinced that blockchain or even Bitcoin as it exists today will succeed. I'm convinced that the bigger concept, which is a internet-based mechanism for trust and a neutral platform that allows us to do international payments to anyone who wants to participate without interference, is an idea that is now possible. And once that idea becomes possible, because it's an idea that can serve a lot of people, we're talking billions of people, it will happen. It's as simple as that. It might have to be changed and modified. There might be setbacks. We might have to redefine success again and again and again. But as a fundamental idea, it is a natural evolution of the idea of the internet. And that idea of the internet is make available to everyone in the world certain capabilities that until recently only the most powerful, the biggest corporations, the richest people, the kings, the governments had. Well, now you have a TV station you're talking to me, and that makes you a journalist, and you can do that through the power of the internet. We build software together the way IBM used to in the 1950s and do it better than IBM because of the internet. And there's no reason why banks are immune to this idea, or governments, that we can build systems that are available to everyone. That idea will succeed. What can make it go wrong? Well, as always with every technology, people. People who are petty and greedy and selfish and emotional and misguided and tribalistic, we break everything. I do trust more in a system where I can understand how the incentives create positive behavior. Because when the incentives create positive behavior, then you're not fighting human nature, you're using human nature. And I think that's one of the reasons why Bitcoin is successful already, and why blockchain technology in general is likely to be successful, is because it uses game theory and incentives to be successful. But we have had a lot of drama, a lot of infighting, a lot of power struggles in this space, just like any other. And I think that's going to continue. It's a natural part of human nature. I think governments will get more aggressive in trying to stop what is happening. And in some places, that's going to mean violence as well as just propaganda. But ultimately, unless we cancel the Renaissance, unless we cancel the 19th and 20th century, unless we revert back to a feudal system, unless we turn off the internet, then this is a natural part of this new world. The ability of humans to behave as equals everywhere, to be respected, to have expression and association, to be able to secure their freedom and their future, to not have interference in their lives, to express their human rights, and to do so digitally, electronically on a giant global communication network. I hope that's in our future, because if it isn't, we're going to have to undo 2 centuries of progress. But as long as that's in our future, then Bitcoin and blockchain is probably part of it. There's no reason why money isn't going to be part of that.
One last question, because I want to be super respectful with your time, I believe some people is going to be listening to this and still be a little bit skeptical, which I know you understand is good, and I do it too. But I would like to talk a little bit about the fiat money and the massive amount of money that is being printed in the last few weeks or months. What are your thoughts on the Fed printing money in Europe?
So there's 2 real perspectives of this. I think there's 2 ways to look at this. One way to look at this is the monetary impact of out of control debt. And, if you talk to an economist, they're going to tell you that this is inevitably going to create inflation at some point, and it destabilizes the value of the currency, which creates all kinds of other problems. But that's a discussion that's best left for economists, and sometimes may take decades to play out and doesn't really impact most people's lives today. What I want to focus on is something else, and that is that when enormous amounts of money are injected into the economy, they're not evenly distributed. They tend to accumulate and are attracted almost like gravity towards people who already have a bit of money and power, who gain more, and people who have a lot of money and power gain a lot more. This in economics is called the Cantillon effect. But the basic idea is that the closer you are to power, the closer you are to the banking system, the closer you are to centers of influence in politics, the more you can take advantage. And so when there are very big changes in the amount of money in a society, they don't go equally. Now, this doesn't require an advanced degree in economics. Everybody out there already can see this is exactly what's happening. In the US, it's even more extreme. It's kind of in your face how ridiculous it is. It's like, here, $1,200 to survive for the next 4 months, and we'll give $4 trillion to the largest businesses on the planet and all of their shareholders. Now shut up and stay at home. In Europe, it's been a bit less aggressive and extreme, but not much. And your average European understands that at the end of the day, the very large businesses, the very rich, have made an enormous amount of wealth. So that's bad. That's bad not for the economy. That's bad for society. That's bad for the health of democracy. That's bad for the health of any culture. And so that creates a lot of internal political pressure in any society. The reason why Bitcoin is interesting is because it doesn't allow that kind of very rapid expansion of money and all of the negative effects. And an economist will tell you that's good for inflation, and everybody else will understand that that's good because it doesn't give enormous power to the already powerful. Now, that doesn't mean that just because of what's happened during the pandemic, Bitcoin is suddenly going to become very successful, or people are going to make great investment decisions. It might take decades for the effect of all of this inequality to show up in society. What it does mean is that as we look at this system and we see how much it's being stretched and how fragile it's become, more and more people are beginning to think, should we have a plan B? Should we have an alternative? So when people ask me, isn't it risky to invest in Bitcoin or to use Bitcoin or to have Bitcoin? I will flip that around and say, isn't it risky to have 100% of your career, your job, your savings, and your house in euros? And if you look at it from that perspective, you've put an awful lot of eggs in one very fragile basket. I'm not saying you should take all of those eggs and put them in another basket and tell you it's less fragile. I'm just saying maybe it's a good idea to have a few different bets going at the same time, to have a few different options. So if one of them blows up, or even goes into a long, sustained multi-year crisis, it's not everything in your life that is affected, and you have an opportunity, an escape, if you like, another choice. That's to me the most relevant aspect of this entire crisis with Bitcoin.
I like it. Yeah, just for finishing the conversation, I would like to ask you 3 super quick questions. First, super classic one is one book that you love to read.
Oh boy. I read 100 books a year.
Damn.
And have been for almost 30 years now. So yeah, I can't really give you one. I think reading is just the most wonderful thing, and whether it's for fun, whether it's pulp junk novels, or it's Tolstoy, it doesn't really matter as long as you read, because it exposes you to new ideas. Even some of them are crap. So I don't know what book to recommend, because there's so many, and it depends what you're interested in.
Okay, I can narrow it for you. Maybe the one that you super love these last 12 months or this natural year.
I read a lot of sci-fi, and I've been rereading some of Arthur C. Clarke and Asimov's series from my childhood, which I really, really like. But in terms of the most relevant to our current period, one of my favorite authors is Cory Doctorow, who writes about the intersection of technology and modern politics and the types of struggles we have in society today. And his most recent book, which is a collection of 4 stories, is one of my favorite. And I can't remember what it's called, but I'll find it right now if you want me to.
Yeah, or you can give me the name later on, and I leave it in the comment.
Okay. The book is called Radicalized.
Second question will be one value or principle that rules your life.
So the value that drives my life more than anything else is justice. Whether it's on a personal level, if I feel like I've been cheated and treated unfairly, that hurts more than anything else. That causes me so much mental anguish. But on a global level as well, I feel very strongly affected when I feel or see that other people are treated unjustly, unfairly, when there is very little justice in the world. That's the value that drives almost everything I do.
And the last question is, I took this from somebody that came to the podcast, because we always ask to the people, what do you do for this or that, or your success and so on. And the podcast is Falla con Éxito is like fell with success. So I try to focus on the dark side of the side that people don't like to talk about. So what do you usually say no to?
What do I usually say no to? I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that.
Yeah, I say no to going to parties every weekend, or eating like bullshit food, or missing.
Oh,
I say no to skip my sleeping time, for example, or to blame on other people.
Oh, I see. I wish I said no more, but I say no to people who think they have a right to my time and attention. It is the most valuable thing to me is my time and attention. And I try to be very careful to who and how much of my time and attention I give. And I'd like to say no even more often.
So after these words, I feel super glad to have you here and to talk with you because we had your time. It's been a super
you're very welcome. And
I have to say
as much as I like to say no to people who want my time, at the same time, I want to always be open to new experiences. So it's important not to close off and lose sense. So I actually really appreciate you inviting me on this show and introducing me to a whole new topic.
Pleasure is mine. I was a little bit nervous. My first interview or conversation in English. I was living abroad for a few years, as I told you, playing poker professionally around the States, Asia, and Europe. But it's been like almost 2 years without almost speaking to English, only listen to people like you online or reading books in English, but it doesn't feel the same. I lost this feeling of talking fluently. So it's been
I would have had no idea that this was your first interview in English. You did super well. So, I mean, congratulations.
We just finished. You don't have to say that.
No, I mean it. Honestly, I had no idea. Good job. I know how hard it is because I couldn't do this in Spanish.
Yeah, man. It was a super pleasure to help you to share your message with my people. Yeah, I don't know if you have a last word or something that you want to share with it and go deep.
Well, no, thank you so much for having me on the show. I hope to visit your area in Spain, Galicia, which I've never been to. I not only love Spain, but I love all Spanish-speaking countries, and I've been working hard for the last 3 years trying to learn a bit more Spanish. I've lived in Latin America for a long time over the past 3 years, and gradually I'm getting better, but I have a really special place in my heart for Spain. Mexico, Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, Costa Rica, all over the place. Yeah.
Sounds good. I will ask you for feedback.
So now when I speak Spanish to people, they tell me that I sound like a Sudamericano.
Yeah, of course, because you learn the language there. So yeah, Andrea, such a pleasure.
Very good.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.